The deer don't like me. They've been staring at me. For context, I live in a small town in West Virginia. Old coal town with like 1,000 people in it. I'm fortunate in that I have some money after working in tech for a while, so I can live comfortably when others are struggling. So I have a fairly decent house on the outskirts of town where I live with my wife. The woods around us are gorgeous. We honestly chose this place for the natural beauty in the hills. It's quiet here, almost too quiet, which is what we were looking for after spending years in San Fran. A little place for us to enjoy some peace. I mean, our closest neighbor is like a half-mile away. Jason, great guy, or he was at least. I was sitting on my back porch the other night with her, and we were enjoying some beer and conversation. We have a little end-of-day routine at this point. And that's when I first heard it. It was this like sound, I'm not sure how to describe it. It's like a grinding, whining sound, or a hum, kind of both. It came from deep in the woods and sounded quite distant. She and I joked it was aliens and didn't think much of it honestly. I mean, weird things happen in the woods sometimes. So we sat on our rocking chairs and sipped our beers and just listened for a while. After maybe 30 minutes, it stopped, and that was that. We went in, went to bed, and called it quits for the day. All was quiet for a while after that. About a week goes by, and things are normal. But one night, as I'm coming back from the store to do our little porch thing, I hear it again. That grinding whimper of a hum. Obviously, I looked back to the woods, but just couldn't see anything but one of the deer that roamed the area. He looked at me and scurried off, and I went inside. I got back into my truck, so fast, and tried turning the engine over. But I guess my stunt with the gate fucked the motor up real bad. I managed to get it to start, and just barely peeled out of it with my wits. But halfway home it crapped out on me, and now we're here. It's getting dark, I'm in the woods, and I have one shotgun shell left. I tried calling Jason, but I have no signal yet again. I'm crying. There's no way I'm walking back at night at this point. And I can hear the humming whine growing louder as the sun continues to set. I can see them, deer eyes in the trees. They're staring at me. I think they're waiting. I don't know what else to do, but I have one shotgun shell and I'm going to make it count. I'm scared, but I'm not going down like that. The deer will not get me. I'm writing this to warn people. When someone says the deer don't like you, don't stick around to find out why. Please, I implore you, because these aren't deer, and they do not like me. They just blinked at me. I'm making this shell count. I recall telling my wife that I'd heard it again, and she said something to the effect of, maybe it's old mining machinery. I asked what she meant, and she said, well, they used to mine for coal in the area. There are tons of mines around. Maybe something's going on with the machines they use. She's not wrong. There are plenty of old coal mines in the area. Not that I knew much about that, but I knew who would. Remember Jason? The guy has lived here his whole life, and I had his number, so I gave him a ring on my cell phone. I couldn't get through to him. Service was down. I guess it happens sometimes, but I got this weird, crawling feeling in my stomach. So I told my wife I was going to go pay him a visit, and she said she'd keep the beer cold for me. I loaded up into my little truck and headed down his way. Now Jason is this big, burly mountain of a man, and his wife is a skinny little woman who is always by his side. But when I got to the dirt driveway to his house, I was stopped by headlights. He stopped the car and got out. I did the same. What's up? I asked him. It's kind of late to be going out, right? And he just kind of stares at me and shakes his head. You hear that? I assumed he was talking about Sean. So, I told him yeah and asked what was in response. He points out into the woods, at a deer that's staring right at us. The moment we lock eyes with it, it darts off. I thought it was whatever, but Jason seemed to think otherwise. Ain't normal, he said. What's not normal? And he spits and goes, deer, they ain't acting right. What, you think the noise is spooky? I thought he'd say yes, but he just kind of stared out into the woods again, where the deer used to be. After a moment, he looked back at me and said, the deer don't do that. Stare. He nods. They don't stare like that. I have no idea what he's talking about. So I kind of shot him this look of confusion, but before I could ask for clarity, he tells me, you'd best go home. Why? 'cause deer don't stare like that. Okay, I figured I'd best leave him alone. He didn't seem right tonight. So I turned around and left, went home, and cracked open a beer with my wife. I told her what he said, and she said, "Well, I have noticed more deer lately, and they are just kind of staring." I asked what she meant. I was in town yesterday and saw 2 deer staring at me out the corner of my eye. And when I looked at them, they just kind of scurried off. Well, I didn't know what to say to that. So we went to bed after a while of silence. Save for the hum, of course, that stopped around 10 p.m. The next day, I woke up and went downstairs to get some coffee started. I was incredibly groggy, as I usually am, and so I didn't notice at first, but, well, I felt this sinking feeling of being watched, and out the corner of my eye, I saw a deer staring through my kitchen window directly at me. The moment I looked in its eyes, I knew something was wrong. I was watching me like it was thinking, and as soon as I realized that, I got this chill that made me shiver, like I wasn't really looking at an animal at all, and then it just ran off. Fuck the coffee. I grabbed my keys and wallet and loaded up and headed to Jason's house immediately. I straight up pounded on the door at like 8 in the morning. And when he answered, he had this look in his eyes, this tired, weary look. Red eyes, dark circles, some sense of exhaustion. He ushered me in quickly. "What the hell is going on?" I asked. And he brings me into his kitchen and tells me, "The deer ain't right." That's when I notice he's got a shotgun on the counter, and one by the door, and a 9mm on his hip. What does that mean? And he shakes his head and says, "You and your wife should get out of here. The deer don't like you." "Who cares if deer don't like whatever?" I said. "They're just deer." Nodding, he kind of chews his lip, then says, "Yeah, well, that noise ain't just a noise." I get this feeling that he's super cagey, and I just feel this deep discomfort wash over me, like I was unwelcome. This from a man who's been nothing but kind to my wife and I. So it was really noticeable. "All right, well, I'll go ahead and leave then," I tell him, but he puts his hand on my arm as I go to leave. "Not without this, you ain't." And he hands me the shotgun on the counter. He also gives me 2 shells, just 2. "Now go on." I don't tell my wife about it all day. But Kay, that evening, when we're on the back porch listening to the hum again, I spill it all to her. The deer, the warning Jason gave me, the shotgun, and she stares at me dumbfounded. But before she can speak, I see another fucking deer in the woods out back, just staring at me. It's not moving. It's hardly even breathing. It's just staring at us. And in the porch glow that's reflected in his eyes, I can just see something human, or at least intelligent. I don't know how to describe it otherwise. But where they'd usually run off when I spot them, this one just kept staring, and staring, and staring. I look at my wife, who is staring back. "What's wrong with it?" she asked me. "I'm not sure, but I don't like it." We head inside, and I grab the shotgun, deciding that I've had enough, and I head back out. And now there are 2 deer there, about through the light from my porch, staring. Hell no, thinks I. So I cocked the gun and fired at them. I swear I hit one square in the body. It should have just killed over then and there, but it didn't, and instead it just runs off, like the shrapnel just went right through it. I ran after a bit and toward the source of the hum, just a ways. But I didn't see any marks in the trees or anything. I know I hit that deer. No blood or anything. So I run back inside. Something is wrong now. This much I know. But when I come back in, my wife is at the front window calling me over. "Honey," she says, "there are more deer out front." I rush up to look, and sure enough, there are 3 deer out there staring directly at us. And I don't know if I'm imaging it, but I swear I saw one mouth the word Sean. My name is Sean. We lock all the doors and head up to the bedroom, where we barricade ourselves in using an old trunk in the foot of our bed. Out the window, I can see more deer gathering outside. They're all staring directly up at us. The hum is getting louder too. I tell my wife we should take turns sleeping, and she agrees. And we decide to GTFO in the morning. She sleeps first. The deer stay there all night. Around 1 a.m., I wake her up to switch off. We do, and I fall asleep, but I wake up again at like 3, and she's gone. The door is open, and she's gone. But in the crack of the door, a fucking deer is staring at me with those human eyes. I screamed, I screamed like I've never screamed before. That seemed to scare it off, and I jumped out of bed and flipped all the lights on. I called out for my wife and got nothing back. The hum stopped. Everything got quiet, and I felt more alone than I ever have in my life. Alone and afraid. I stay up until the sun rises, and I start looking for my wife. We're on to today at this point. I try to call Jason again, and this time I have service. My wife is gone. I cry to him when he picks up, and he literally just says, "Deer don't like you," and hangs up. Now I'm alone in my house, and I have to find my wife. Our truck is still there, so she couldn't have gone far. So I load up and head to where the hum is coming from. I don't know what else to do. After like 30 minutes of rough, rocky dirt road, I find, sure enough, an old mine surrounded by a rusted wire fence. It's mostly quiet here, but somewhere deep, somewhere obscure, I can hear it. That grinding hum. Like mechanical gears crying out for oil. The fence is sturdy, but the front of my truck is sturdier. I rammed that thing at full force and ended up on a hillside mine with old wooden shafts and conveyors that probably haven't been used since the 60s. Fuck the truck up though. I grabbed a shotgun from the seat. One shell left. Feeling powerless and scared shitless. "Honey," I called. Nothing. Nothing but the hum deep inside the earth. I searched the whole place, top to bottom, before finding the entrance to the mine itself. And I could hear it, that awful noise deep inside. "Honey," it echoed off the walls, bouncing side and through. And in that moment, the hum stopped. Just completely stopped. I stared into the mine shaft, standing before the open metal doors, one round in chamber, and then I see them, the eyes of deer. Not one, not two, but dozens of deer, all blinking into existence inside of the darkness within. The one in front, though I couldn't see its body, well, I know what my wife's eyes look like. I screamed. I ran and I screamed. My neighbor used to peek at me over her fence when I was little. Her fence is 10 foot tall. I didn't realize my new customer used to be my neighbor until I pulled into her driveway. The street name had sounded vaguely familiar when I first read it. A few landmarks on the drive over it sparked something in me. Nothing solid though, just a prickling sense of recognition I couldn't place. It only clicked when I actually saw my old childhood home sitting right beside my customer's property. I know it's strange that it took me that long, that I hadn't recognized anything when I put the address into Google Maps. But my uncle moved me out of this quiet neighborhood when I was 6. I barely remembered anything about living on this street or in that house. My girlfriend, Ellie, said that wasn't quite normal, told me gently that it was probably my brain blocking things out on purpose. I sat gripping the steering wheel long after I'd parked, staring at my childhood home. It backed onto a large woodland area, tall trees looming far above the roof. The bungalow itself looked abandoned, shattered windows, empty bottles scattered across dead yellow grass. Clearly no one had lived there in a long time. A heavy pressure settled in my chest. For a moment, I considered leaving, but I'd only started my lawn mowing business a few months ago. I needed the money. This woman was only my 3rd customer so far. She hadn't called like the others. She emailed instead. "Am interested in your service. Every week Sunday work." I replied that Sundays were fine and asked for the address. She sent it, followed by another message. "Door left open Sundays. Money on table. Help self to drink dot and meal." It struck me as odd that she'd contacted someone who lived an hour away instead of a local business, but she'd promised a generous tip. Still sitting in the van, I tried to remember my old neighbor. Elderly, maybe. The emails felt better. But when I searched my memory for a face, I came up blank. Just another thing lost to my strange childhood amnesia. Her lawn was wildly overgrown. Knee-high grass, thick and uneven. The house itself was perfectly normal. A neat 2-story place with a front porch. Well kept enough that the state of the yard felt odd, almost like a choice. I hesitated, wondering if I should knock or just start the job. In the end, I got to work. Part of me didn't want to meet her yet. I was delaying it. I couldn't explain why. As I mowed, my gaze kept drifting to the fence separating her property from my old home. It was enormous, easily 10 feet tall. I couldn't believe something like that had been proved in a quiet suburban street. But it wasn't just the size. Every time I looked at it, pressure built behind my eyes. The sensation of memory forcing its way up, while something inside me resisted just as hard. Effort made my head jerk. Then, for a split second, I remembered hair. Long, black strands spilling down the fence from the other side. Tangled and thin, draped over the timber, clinging to the wood, hanging there like a ragged curtain. I'd frozen on my cheap plastic dresser. One of the back wheels was missing, so I had to balance my weight just right to keep it upright. It's strange, the useless little details that scramble back when everything else is lost. The hair shifted, and slowly, above the lip of the fence, the pale forehead rose. There were eyes, white and cloudy. I only saw them for a moment, but I knew immediately who they were peeking down at. Me, only me. Then there had been a sound behind me. Maybe a voice, maybe someone calling my name. The eyes vanished. The forehead sank out of sight. The hair slid upward, strand by strand, slithering back over the fence until there was nothing left of. Cold washed through my body. I tightened my grip on the mower handle and focused on the lines of grass ahead of me. I didn't look at the fence again. Surely it had just been my imagination, something I'd invented out of boredom. No one could peer over a 10-foot tall fence unless they were standing on stilts or balancing on some ridiculous ladder. And even then, why would anyone climb that high just to look at a child playing in their backyard? It was too strange to take seriously, too absurd. And yet, an unease bloomed low in my chest and refused to settle. Because that image, hair spilling at the fence, eyes watching, was suddenly one of the clearest memories I had from that house. From that time, clearer than anything else I could recall. In over a decade, I shook my head to force the image away and got back to work. An hour later, the lawn looked respectable again. I packed my equipment back into my uncle's van. Then I remembered the money. I knocked on the front door and waited a bit. She did say to let myself in, but it felt wrong to just waltz into a stranger's house. I waited another few minutes before finally reaching for the handle and stepping inside. "Ms. Ramona, are you home?" I called out, remembering her name from her email address. One of the first things I noticed was the ceiling. It was unusually high. It made the space feel wide and open, almost cavernous. It also made it incredibly cold inside. Goosebumps rose over my arms. Most of the ground floor was open plan, so I spotted the kitchen right away, where a wooden table sat by the counter. There was money laid out neatly on top of it. Beside it, a glass jug filled with what looked like lemonade, ice cubes floating inside. A clean glass, a sandwich on a plate, she'd said to help myself. Still, I hesitated. I felt silly to be cautious, but I hadn't even met her. I picked up the money and nearly choked when I counted it. 4 $50 notes. I only charged $60. She'd mentioned a tip, sure, but this was excessive. What if she was elderly? What if she'd miscounted? I took 100 and left the other 100 on the table, just in case. That was when I heard something upstairs. A wheeze, wet and uneven, like air being dragged through damaged lungs. After that, 2 sharp creaks snapped through the house in quick succession, floorboards protesting under sudden weight. My body went rigid. Someone was definitely home. I stared at the staircase. "Hello?" My voice rang too loud in the open space. "Ms. Ramona?" No answer. I edged closer to the stairs despite myself, my heart beginning to pound. The noises replayed in my head. What had made them? Had she fallen? Was she hurt? If she was elderly, I told myself I should check. That was the decent thing to do. But another part of me was screaming to leave. The feeling was sudden and absolute, like stepping into a place you were never meant to enter, like bait. After a moment, I turned back to the table. I picked up the sandwich so I wouldn't seem rude, my hands clumsy and shaking, and then I got out. When I drove home, I sat in the van for a long time with the engine off. The sandwich rested on the passenger seat. Eventually, I opened the bread. Inside was butter and raw, red meat. I swallowed, then noticed something else threaded through it. I pinched it between my fingers and pulled. A single hair slid free, dark, absurdly long. I told my girlfriend what happened. but left out the part about my strange memory. Ellie laughed. You're scared of little old granny? I don't know if she's a granny, I said. I've never met this woman. She could be a man for all I know. Are you sure? You said she was your neighbor. She said, her eyes soft but insistent. That gentle look she always got when she was trying to probe something about my childhood. Are you sure you don't remember anything? That long, black hair entered my mind again. At that moment, I remembered something else. I remembered a single strand had caught in the wind, drifting in the breeze until it detached and floated down to my 6-year-old self. I remembered plucking it from the air and then playing with it carefully so it wouldn't snap. I had wrapped it around my arm. Amazed, I could coil almost the entire length of my little forearm, like linen around an Egyptian mummy. I shook my head at Ellie's question and told her about the inedible sandwich instead. Ellie laughed again, shaking her head. The poor woman probably has dementia. A week later, I went back. I didn't want to, but Ellie had made me realize I was being ridiculous, and the money mattered. If we ever wanted to move out of my uncle's house, we moved. My stomach churned the whole drive. Before I even started the mower, my eyes were on the fence again. I remembered long, curling fingers reaching over the top, and once more, I remembered seeing half a face peering down at me, just eyes and forehead visible above the timber, watching. I reluctantly went inside to collect my pay. This time, she left $300 on the table. Beside it, a note, the handwriting thin and spidery. Take all money. Why no drink? My gaze drifted to the jug of lemonade. I filled a glass, intending to pour half of it down the sink to make it look like I'd had some. Instead, for some reason I couldn't explain, I took a small sip. It was cold, sweet, good. After that, the memories returned, stronger than ever. I had a dream that night. A dream about food being thrown over an enormous fence. Sometimes it was a roast chicken, still warm inside a plastic bag, juices sloshing against the sides. Other times it was a whole chicken, raw, feathers still clinging to pale skin. Sometimes it was fresh fruit in a cracked plastic container. Other times, it was rotting apples in a thick slab of heavy, red meat. I remembered the hunger. I remembered setting up a blanket over the bushes beside the fence. A small hidden nest where I could crouch and store what I was given. I remembered eating like an animal, devouring whatever was edible before anyone could find me. I remember my scalp itching constantly. Lice, multiplying, biting, crawling, with no one bothering to stop them. A whole kingdom of parasites living freely in my hair. Then I remember the hand. It slipped through the narrow gap between the fence and the bushes where I sat with my back pressed against the timber, rustling the spindly branches. The hand was enormous but gentle. One long finger brushed the tangled hair out of my face. The itching faded. I stared up and saw nothing but the endless length of a thin, gray arm disappearing over the fence. I remembered wrapping my small hands around that enormous finger and holding tight, crying into it. Then I remembered an angry voice coming from somewhere. The finger wriggled gently until I released it, and then the hand vanished. The arm withdrew. When I looked back up, only a faint wisp of dark hair was visible above the fence line. Someone tore the blanket away from my hiding place. They yelled, screamed in disgust. I was sitting on a hoard of food. A lot of it was rotting. There were flies. There were maggots. Hands grabbed my arm and dragged me out of the bushes and away from the massive fence. So hard, I thought the bone would snap. Stop. I screamed. The third time I went back to mow Ramona's lawn, I did not hesitate. Something had begun to clarify itself inside me, like an image slowly coming into focus. And I knew I needed to speak to her. Ramona, finally. I didn't know if the memories were wholly real, but pieces were fitting together now, clicking into place with quiet inevitability. I felt closer to the truth than I ever had before, and instead of making my head ache, it planted something determined inside me, something that refused to be quiet any longer. I thought maybe my neighbor had been a sweet old granny who babysat me sometimes. Maybe she fed me. Maybe she took care of me. Maybe she read me stories. Maybe this was the only way my memories were able to return. Disguised as something else, something not quite real, but threaded through the truth. As I started the lawn mower this time, I didn't look away from the fence. I remember the humming, a low, steady hum, as I lay hidden in the bushes beside the fence. The yelling in the house always softened when I listened to her hums. I remembered being lifted so high I could see over the roof of my house. I remembered being placed on a sturdy tree branch in the forest and being given a dead fox. I remembered biting into the furry flesh, feeling warm blood dribble down my cheeks. I remembered sitting in a cocoon of warmth high above the ground, watching the stars blink into existence. I remembered running to my hiding place between the fence and the bushes, shaking, starving, sick with fear. I remembered someone chasing me. "Henry, you get back here right now, you little shit," she screamed. She caught my arm and wrenched me around. "Mummy, stop." I sobbed, "Don't hurt me again." I remembered my mother freezing, and I remembered something brushing the back of my neck, light and familiar, like long strands of hair. My mother gasped, staring at something above us, terror carved into her face. I looked up, then the fingers came. They wrapped around my mother's body and lifted her. Up, up, up. She was screaming as she did it. So I called out, "It's okay, Mummy. She's just taking you to see the stars." There was a deafening crunch, and her screaming stopped. I saw something fly across the sky like a meteor, disappearing into the forest. Hands closed around me. They were so warm and lifted me, gentle, careful, cocooning me as I shook and clung to the heat. I rose high enough to see over the roof of my house. Just like all those other times, I finally remembered seeing her face. The image was clear now, unblurred, impossible to look away from. She was pale and gaunt. Her lips stretched too wide across her skull, but her eyes, they were dark, but they were warm. Did Mummy like seeing stars? I asked her. She hummed. My hand shook. I didn't turn the lawnmower off. I walked toward her house on numb legs, the sound of the engine fading into something distant, barely there. The front door was open, as it always was. I climbed the staircase slowly. A low groan echoed from above, stretching and deepening as I went. The upper floor was completely open plan, wide and sloping like an expansive attic. And laid out across, it was a very tall woman. Her skin was a shade close to gray. Her face had the weathered features of someone much older than me. Her limbs were long and spindly. She lay on her side on a soft floor mat that covered nearly every inch of the space, her body folded carefully, purposely, as if she had made herself smaller for me. Her eyes found mine the moment I stepped inside. I dropped to my knees and sobbed before I could stop myself. Terror and grief and everything I had buried for so long rushed to me all at once, crushing and merciless. Fingers reached out, impossibly large, wrapping around me and drawing me gently toward her. I was pulled into warmth, deep and steady, and my shivering slowly began to ease. "You killed her," I sobbed. "You killed her, didn't you?" She hummed softly. "Why? Why did you do that?" I said, the words breaking apart as they left me. She brushed my hair back. My cries thinned into small, broken whimpers. "Why didn't she care about me?" I whispered. "Why did she let me starve? Why did she hurt me? I was just a little kid." Her warmth held. Her breathing stayed slow and even. I fell asleep. When I woke up, I was in a bed. Across from me, seated in an armchair, was a little old lady. Her eyes were distant, as if part of her had wandered somewhere far away and hadn't yet found its way back. Still, they stayed on me, steady and patient. We were still upstairs. The massive mat lay stretched across the floor, unchanged. The bed had been tucked into a small corner of the room, like it had been put there for me. "Who are you?" I asked. "What was that thing?" She didn't answer. Instead, her gaze drifted to something beside me. I followed it and saw a folded note resting on the mattress. I picked it up with shaking hands. I cursed with sighs and hunger, but I protect. Sweet little boy, cold and hungry, I carry you to the stars, where she not reach. Lost myself when I took her, but she not hurt you anymore. Forgive me, please. When I drove home, I finally asked my uncle to tell me the truth. I'd always known something horrible happened to my mother, but there were details surrounding the event that deep down, I think, I never wanted to learn, but I felt stronger now. I was ready to show me the pictures first. They were of me as a little boy. My hair was long and scraggly. I wore dirty clothes that were torn to seams. My body was mapped with bruises and cuts and burn marks. There wasn't much to know in the end, except the fact that my mother was a monster, and when she was found in the woods one day, half-eaten, a case that would quickly be declared as an animal attack. People called it karma after they learned what she did to me. I continued to visit Ramona. I brushed her hair and cared for her when she was a little old granny. I laid down and listened to her hums when she was something else. I wrote all of this down because, unlike my mother, Ramona deserves to be remembered. I could never tell anyone about her. They would have hurt her or killed her, but I needed someone to know. Ramona may have been a beast, but it wasn't her fault. Even when she lost control, it all came down to an instinct to protect. When she was dying, I fell asleep holding her large hand, and when I woke up, there was nothing. She was gone. Even though she doesn't live there anymore, even though the house is no longer occupied, I still go back to mow her lawn. And sometimes when the lawn is done, I linger until the night swallows the sky. When I focus on the constellations, it almost feels like I'm rising slowly above the roof of the house.